everybody. Welcome to the Hustling Sideways podcast. I'm Alan Halas. I'm a music writer,
And I'm Jim Love, and I'm a keynote and motivational speaker.
and this is episode number 95.
Number 95. We are getting there, folks. It's been almost a 4-year run,
Yeah.
and it's coming to an end. No, I'm just kidding.
No,
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 we
no,
have
no.
we have a lot more coming, and we're very excited. It is 2025, which is wild. And it almost like 2025 is oddly comforting because it's like right in the middle. And it's like, I don't know, something about the middle of a decade makes me feel better. I'm not saying like I don't feel old or something. I do, but
Yeah.
it's just like I don't know, something about it is just like aesthetically pleasing looking at the number.
It's
I feel better about that.
sure. You know
You
what it is?
disagree, I could
No,
tell,
no,
but it's
no.
okay.
The thing that is for me though is that sounded like a made up number when we were like kids.
It still is. Yeah,
To be like,
it doesn't
yeah.
exist. We're living in a time it doesn't exist for a number of reasons.
Like
But
right now,
yes,
I'm still like, oh man, 2050 is not a thing.
no, and it's
Like that's not a real time. That's like the
okay.
space age
That's actually
future,
made up.
right?
We're all going to be dead by then. It's going to be great. Yeah. Anyway, on that note, as you know, Alan and I both went to a small Jesuit college in Milwaukee called Marquette, and we met a lot of really cool people all over
It's
there.
actually it's a small city that
Yeah.
spans from 6th
9th Street
Street
on the
to 9th
east, yeah,
Street.
20th Street. Yeah, yeah. We
Yeah.
won't do it all. But part of that includes our friends that are really into basketball. We're both large basketball fans, and
Kind of been a through line on this
I would
show.
say so.
We've
Yeah.
had tons of basketball people
Yeah,
on.
and a couple players. Joe Chapman's been here. Jarrell McNeil's been here. Who Jarrell and I have of course, the one sad thing in common now. We're both from Chicago, both White Sox fans and both Marquette alums. So we always have that unfortunate White Sox fandom in common. But part of the community that comes with Marquette basketball is the folks that write about it and
Yes.
that are really analytically driven. They would call themselves nerds. I would call them awesome, but whatever they want to get into. And we have one of those folks here with us tonight.
One of those writers, not one of those nerds.
No, correct. One of the writers. Yes. We'll see how he self-identifies. But we have Andrei Greska. Andre is in marketing by day and is the founder of the popular Paint Touches, both Twitter account and website by night. Andre, welcome to
We are.
Hustling Sideways.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, nerd is fine. Nerd works.
It works. It works.
That's what my wife calls me, so if she calls me that,
There you
it's
go.
fine.
A lot of love. And Andre, you are in, is it Philly?
I was in Philly to college, but now I'm in Medina, right outside of Cleveland. So I am a Clevelander, and I say like now, but it's going to be 10 years next year, which blows my mind. Like speaking of
Long
like
time.
being in
Yeah.
lots of places, so yeah,
Dude,
I'm,
that's
I'm like
wild.
halfway between Akron and Cleveland.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I know a couple, some basketball talents come from Akron and from Cleveland. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah, some guys.
A couple
Some guys
couple
come
dudes.
from Akron.
Sandra, tell us about your journey to certainly to where we met in college and what you learned a little bit about and really let's talk a little about what you studied, which is certainly like the marketing and business area, and then what you got a lot more interested in while you were there.
I'm assuming
Well,
this is at Georgetown, right? Or UConn or
Yeah,
no?
one of those, not a Dayton, that's for sure.
oh God, too soon. Yeah, no. So, speaking of, um, I went to school in the south suburbs of Chicago. I can't say Chicago because Jimmy could call me out on it, but I'm from Worth, Illinois. Well, I'm from
Yeah.
Mexico, and I lived in Rosemont and then lived in Worth for like 10 years. So Worth is my basically my home base. And when I was thinking about colleges, my parents were like, "Well, here's this." They drew a circle. Here's like a 90-minute radius. You could go to any school you want within this 90-minute radius. And I had my eyes set on Notre Dame. I had done a program over the summer there, kind of fell in love with it, and just things didn't work out with some scholarship stuff there, and stuff did work out at Marquette. And so I had visited once, but the only reason I ever even applied to Marquette is because, oh, well, I guess there's two reasons. One is when my advisor on the on the newspaper team at my high school, John Bucky, he went to Marquette, and he was like a big influence on me. So I knew about them. And because they gave you this cool hat if you applied. So this was back in the day where like you had to pay to apply to places. I don't think that's that way
Oh my
anymore.
gosh.
So
Yeah.
like it was a
I remember
free
that.
application
Mm-hmm.
and you got a hat. So I'm like, well, of course I'm gonna apply. Like
Oh
I
yeah, you
I
gotta get
still
the
have
hat.
this hat. It's like brown. It's not even like yellow anymore, but I'm never gonna get rid of it because like, again, it changed my life and changed everything that I thought about. So I went to school for journalism.
Mm-hmm.
My dream was to be the columnist on the back page of the Chicago Tribune. Well, sometimes, but a columnist in the Chicago Tribune because I didn't like Jay Mariotti of the Sun Times.
No one does,
I was
man.
big
Yeah.
into like PTI and Around the
Yeah.
Horn, and I just did not
Yeah.
like him anytime he was on. So like that's who I grew up with. Like I grew up talking heads, sports, like
Mm-hmm.
everything was sports, sports, sports. I'd get home, I'd watch Jeopardy, I'd watch sports all night. And I played a little bit, but I'm not very good. So it was mostly like, well, if I can't like be in sports, I could be around sports. And what's the best way to do it? Well, what if I get paid to watch? And then, I could write a little bit. So I'm like, might as well do this for a living. So, yeah, I went to Marquette because they had a good journalism program, they had a good scholarship, and the basketball was phenomenal. So it was funny. I had an interview for one of my scholarships, with Dr. Feldner, Provost
Mm-hmm.
Polly, some people that are still around.
Yeah.
And it was the day after the Lopez twins beat
Oh
Marquette
gosh. Yeah.
in I think it was the round of 32. It was just
Yeah.
a awful finish, like a back and
Horrible.
forth game. So like
Yeah.
that's all we talked about to begin with. It was like because I had watched it the night before, and everyone's all like
Yeah.
bummed out on campus, and it's like, is Dominic James going to be back? And so like it was a really kind of cool insight into what the heart of the campus was at that
Mm-hmm.
time. Obviously, March Madness, everyone's talking about that, but I really didn't have that before. Like I'd never been to a college where sports was like part of the
Mm-hmm.
identity of the place. I obviously Notre Dame football is one thing, but it's kind
Mm-hmm.
of like beyond the university at this point. So I like the university. Like I said, everything worked out real nicely, and the journalism program was great. So yeah, I made that decision, and it was within driving distance. So I was like not too close, where like
Right.
my parents could be there within 10 minutes, but not too far away, where like if I needed laundry and my mom was like around, like, oh, hey ma.
Yeah.
No, but
Right.
Yep. That's
it
great.
worked out real well for everyone.
Yeah.
I think I had an awesome time.
Yeah.
I actually didn't do the newspaper my
Mm-hmm.
first year. My first year, my now wife was a senior in high school at the time. So again, that was a drawback of being so close. Is I
Mm-hmm.
mean, me and the Hiawatha are like this. I still
Oh
have so
yeah.
many points. I would be like on that thing every
First
other
number
weekend.
times five.
So my
Yes,
poor my
100%.
poor roommate Tom Coughlin, he was my roommate all 4 years. But like I left him hanging a lot just because I'd be booking it back home. So like freshman year I didn't do much. Sophomore, junior year I got into the newspaper, and then
Mm-hmm.
senior year, I like I had a really good group of friends on the newspaper. Mark Stratman, who was the
Mm-hmm.
co-founder, I would say he was the originator because it was his idea. So like we still
Right.
have this pen and pad he sent around. He sent to me emails like, "Hey, this is our senior year. We love basketball. We had been covering for a few years at the time. Let's do something like better than just like a twice a week column or a twice a week reporting." Because I mean, when you have that kind of access that you do as a student reporter, most of the time it's like cool, but you don't really like take advantage of it. So it was his idea, like, let's do it. So Mike Nelson, he was the sports editor at the time. We're like, okay, so this is what we're gonna do. And so we just started like going ham on reporting. And like by ham, I
Yeah.
mean like we would be writing stuff like twice a day. We'd be posting, it'd be like six people reading it. But no one had done it at the time. This was right around the advent of social media. So like it was a thing, but
Yeah.
not a thing. So I
Yep.
remember the coming out party for Paint Touches, which is the blog that we founded, and it was literally just a blog. It was just a WordPress site attached to the Marquette Tribune, um, was that for Marquette Madness, which is I rue the day that it has gone, and I wait for its return.
I know, man.
It was my indoctrination into Marquette basketball because again, I knew Marquette basketball was big,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't until like I lined up thinking I was like, oh, I'm an hour early. I'm going to get great seats, and I'm like all the way to the top.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it was your freshman year too, Jim. I'm not sure, Ellen,
Right.
if you
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
there
Same,
during
Same.
that.
same
Same
age
Okay,
year.
here.
so
Yeah.
I mean, like, and Jim,
Mhm.
you probably were there in the front row. I know you were always on top of your game, but I was not. So I was like, okay, people really, really care about it. It was awesome. And so again, freshman and sophomore year, I went, knew the thing. Junior year, it was cool. But senior year, it was the year that the NBA was on lockout.
Oh, lockout.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
the
Mm-hmm.
big thing with the blog is like we started bring Wade to campus, and we would just tweet it
Mm-hmm.
out like literally, and before Twitter was big. Like I think um some people had it, but it wasn't necessarily like
Yep.
common knowledge across everywhere. So it was niche to
Those are
begin
the
with.
early days.
Yeah.
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 So we just like started bombarding people. We would tweet at Wade like literally every day, like, "Hey, come to campus." And I remember like I watched it the other day where he comes out and he like shouts out, "Thanks for all like the
A
shout outs
hashtag
on
on
Twitter.
Twitter.
Like I
Yeah, to get
appreciate."
me here. Yeah. Yeah.
Legit, like I could have quit life at that point. I'm like, you know what? It's probably not going to get better than this. So if it was the first time that we felt like, okay, like we're not just like a crappy student blog. We're
Mm-hmm.
people that that are trying very hard. Obviously, that's one thing, but can gain an audience. So that whole
Mhm.
year, again, we would do podcasts. Sometimes we'd go on the TV hits for MUTV. We did a whole bunch of blogging. We'd print in the newspaper. And it was great. Like it was just an awesome way to, and it was a great team too. So my senior year was 2012, obviously with you guys. So we had Jay, DJO,
Mhm.
Vander Blue. That team was top 15 most of the year. It was a lot of fun to watch, a great style. And the other, the other like positive again, why I kind of continued afterwards is that um, the Journal Sentinel, so the newspaper in Milwaukee, had really, really good coverage my freshman and sophomore year with Todd Rosiak. So he's
Oh,
now the beat guy for the Brewers.
mhm.
Awesome guy, like legit. We could sit down, he'd tell you everything you want to know, like always willing to talk. Great guy. But he was followed by a couple of subpar beat
Mhm.
reporters in the sense that they weren't really wanting to be there. They had been put on it because it was just there, and the JS didn't really want to spend. I can't tell you the number of pitches I sent to the JS. Hey, can we write what we do and just print it for you? I never heard back. But again,
So wild. Yeah.
what we found out was people wanted this coverage. Like Marquette fans are crazy. Like we
Mhm.
are crazy. Like
Yeah.
it is not normal
It's
the
a
way that
cult.
we follow
Yeah, I agree.
basketball.
Yep. Yeah.
It's
So
a
people
fandom. I
wanted.
wouldn't go cult. We're a
I
Jesuit
mean,
school.
it's like right below. It's not necessarily cultish, but
All right.
you could kind of see the features that are starting to populate
Yeah.
here and there. And so again, now it's not just students that were reading our blog. We would get a ton of interaction with like real life people. And that showed us like, hey, people are reading. So I remember at Wisconsin that year, we all drove. There's four of us to Madison. I did the
Mhm.
radio show with Matt Trebby. And they did the print. And so after the game, we're like writing our stories. I used to do these Twitter recaps. So I literally would take
Mhm.
screenshots of what people would say on Twitter, and I would just post them as pictures because every
Yeah.
time you clicked on the page, it would be a new page view. So like I was just juicing our
Mm.
numbers. It's like
Yeah.
if I put in 30 and everyone looked at it,
Totally.
if there's 10 people
Don't
look
do
at it,
it.
there we got 300 views. Wow, awesome. So I mean, we would get maybe like a couple hundred views a day. And for us, like, and that was huge because we were talking
Mhm.
to nobody.
Totally.
Like this is student reporting. We're not expected to be taken seriously. Um, and we were in the locker room listening to Bo Ryan speak, or not the locker room, in the media room, listening to Bo
Mhm.
Ryan do his press conference. I had just posted, and obviously Madison game, all of the alums come out, everyone starts tweeting. By this point, Twitter was a little bit better now. But what happened is I started following these numbers, and it's like, okay, this is cool. Like we got like 800 in the first 10 minutes. And again, if I posted 40, that means 200 people, which again, 200 people are following our blog. And then it got into like the thousands, like right after the game. And so like I'm showing my computer to everyone, and they were like, "Oh." So again, those two events were the triggers that kind of let us know that, hey, we are doing something that is resonating with people outside of like our parents.
Mhm.
So when you get that kind of feedback, it feels good. It's like it's vain. It's kind of egotistical when you think about it that way, but it feels good when the work that you do is having an effect like that, and you can get that.
Yeah.
So
Love it.
yeah, we just plugged away that year, and went to the NCAA tournament. So that was in Louisville, and
Yeah.
again, on thank you Marquette, they paid for us to drive and fly down there. And Mark in particular had a really, really good article. He wrote about Jay Crowder, so he got to talk to his dad.
Mhm.
And we were tweeting at everybody. But again, we were in the media area, and Mark and I are talking. We're like, listen, we're averaging a couple thousand views a week. Like, it's not a lot, but it's more than we're used to.
It's
Mhm.
What
substantial. Yeah.
what if we just kept it? Like, what do we have to give paint touches back? So we like spent that weekend looking at like laws. Like, how does this work? Like, is this property of Marquette in the Marquette
Yeah.
Tribune? Is this our property? Like, do we have to like get get a business license for this? And so what we did is we just went up to the editors. We're like, "Hey, we're gonna keep it." They're like, "Okay." So, so that was that. From
Mandatory.
now on, Paint Touches belongs to us officially. And so yeah, then now it's been what is it, 12 years?
12 years.
12
Yeah.
Yeah.
years
Yeah.
of Marquette.
So
That's
there is so many similarities to. So I run a music website called Breaking and Entering that started as a Marquette radio show. Well, was a podcast before that.
yeah.
If we're
Yeah.
really going back, but was a student radio show, and then I just had the domain, so I just kept going with
Yeah,
it. You know,
That's it.
that's it.
so
That's
and
awesome.
I mean, there are so many similarities to like what if we, once you get that initial response of like, hey, there's more people than like this isn't just some student thing.
Hmm.
Not saying that like student media isn't important because there's totally value in it, but when you have your own thing and people that are not in the Marquette bubble
Hmm.
are noticing it, then all of a sudden you're like, you have like the
This is
gas
this.
to be
Yeah,
like, okay,
yeah.
we're going now.
Hmm.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
You know,
So there's so many things like that, but you had an advantage that I did not have, which is you had a way in to access all of these things, right? To
Yes.
like, I always try to do my things separate from Marquette,
Right.
and so I was like, I would apply for press passes and things like that, but you're able to get into like have access to players
Yeah.
and it's your own
100%.
brand
hmm
underneath it entirely as a student. So that's an incredible like leg up to be like, oh, we're where the national media is, and
Yeah, literally,
there,
like it's the
Yeah.
weirdest thing. We're sitting like next to these people that I idolize. So,
Yeah.
one story that I've told, I mean, I told it in print when Buzz left, but
Yeah.
in so this is Louisville. I'm a senior. Like I am obsessed with Buzz. Like we just won. We beat Murray State to go to the Sweet 16. Like we're at a bar. We got invited to go out to a bar with like Pat Ford, Andy Glockner, just like the people that I
Like
read
Mount
all the
Rushmore
time.
of writers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so and Jeff Goodman was there too. And so like we are students um drinking with these like real humans that we read about all the time. And it's just like you said, like who gets that kind of access? Like that, I've
Yeah.
never talked to them again. Like that was the only time in my life, like those years where I would sit next to them in press conferences. I would sit next to them if they like invited us out, like we'd go out, follow them to drink. But yeah, no, it was an incredible kind of opportunity. And that's the one thing too that I'll say is um I I got lucky that Mark, and I'll shout out Mark every single time because he's like the rock. He's like the pillar of everything I've done. I got lucky that he had that like gumption because a lot of times when you have that access, you take it for granted. Like you do the bare minimum. You're like, okay, I really want to go with my friends. Like I don't want to like follow the
yeah.
team. Like I don't want to go to the Big East tournament. Like for some people it'd be cool, but for a lot of people it'd be like that's much. I don't want to go out of my spring break and the kind of work during this time. So his kind of impetus really helped because again we just got really lucky with the confluence of timing.
Mm.
Like you said, got lucky with the availability of being able to talk to players. Talk to coaches, talk to everyone that we would need to. So like we would know the admins inside the administration. So right now, like if I want to, I could go and I could get a press pass today because they know me, they know the work I've
Mhm.
done. And not to say that my work is quality or anything, but at least I've had this connection to them that a lot of people don't even have the opportunity to. And so like if Jim, I mean Jim might be able to. He's kind of a big shot, but like if Jim, if you wanted to like
Okay.
you wanted to email the AD and be like, hey, can I get a press pass for National Marquette? They'd be like, no.
Absolutely
And
not. Yeah.
like that's where
Like
again,
have six less beers than you're gonna have, and then
Yeah.
it'll go. It's so funny, Andre, when you talked about madness of Wade, having that moment. I remember that really well, and I remember like you talking about it really
yeah,
well. And I remember one thing. This is how old Twitter was then. I was trying to say I tried to tweet like D Wade at Madness, like with like a picture of him. And at that time, if you typed the word D, you were DMing someone. And
Oh,
so Twitter said you can't send this because you don't follow Wade, like just the name Wade. And I remember getting an error
oh
message
my
back
God.
trying to on my BlackBerry. I mean, this is just
Oh
like
yeah.
my
I tried to
goodness.
say
Early
D Wade at
days.
Madness. I remember getting an error, and I was so mad. I was like, why can't I tweet about D Wade? And it was like you don't follow that person. Like yeah, you fight D as a DM.
Also, as a quick sidebar before we get too far away from it,
No.
I also got turned down by the Journal Sentinel for writing about music. I submitted some test pitches,
That was bad.
some
Yeah,
article reviews through
We're
Marquette,
yeah, we're
actually.
living the same life, Alan. We're in the same
that's
page.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
very very. That's
Uh, and
yeah.
so here's my experience with paint touches. I
Mhm.
will also bring this up because I was always under the impression reading it because I followed the Twitter account before anything, because I was following Marquette basketball
Mhm.
and it just showed up as a suggested person to follow at that point. Um, I was always under the impression that this was like an alum that was running it, that it was somebody outside of that just really wanted to be involved with Marquette basketball, that was able to like it wasn't a media person, it was just
Yeah,
somebody that was like outside of the circle. Never until today did I know that it was actually a student that was running it to start, or
Yeah,
students,
that's
yeah,
right.
you know.
That's right.
And I totally like as somebody that works in media now, and I work with a small team of writers that where we publish a bunch. Um, I know that there are days where you're like, oh well, nobody has anything, right?
Mhm.
So I can't even imagine that you guys, had the desire to be like, today we're writing, we're like, you guys all had to be on point to be like, we're all gonna write
This is
stuff.
it.
We're all gonna write
Yeah.
articles. We're all gonna turn things in because you knew that like you were gaining some headway, and which is hard to do. And not only like the social media space, but the blogging space at the time, like you were on the forefront of it.
Yeah, like I said, so much is luck. Like one of the things that we did at the time that worked out just phenomenally is, so we were trying to get Twitter followers. I think we were like 130 at the time for the
Mhm.
for Paint Touches, and so we messaged the Georgetown newspaper, whatever it's called, and we're like, hey, do you want to have a contest to see who could gain the most followers the next whatever? I don't know if it was a week or month, and
Yeah.
then whoever loses has to change their avatar or their pick to whatever we
Sure.
choose. And they're like,
Yeah.
sure, why not? And so like
Yeah.
that that kind of stuff, like
Yeah.
people gravitated to it. So
It's
that's when people that
invaluable.
were
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
students started following us because like, sure, we'll help you out. And I think we ended up with like 1,500 after that. So like
Mhm.
that initial push. So now you have
Yeah.
your like base audience that, and if they start sharing it, if they start
Mhm.
liking it or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it just it was great experience. It kind of cemented in my mind that I wanted to work in sports journalism, which kind of makes the rest of my career a little
Mhm.
bit disheartening in the sense that I do not, but not in the sense that it didn't work out. It's just
Yeah.
obviously stuff always happens for a reason. And
That's how
and
it
I'll tell
goes.
you this.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
don't know how far you want to go, but
Mhm.
to me, paint touches, I can never give it up. I at times like sometimes I'll write like once, especially during the summer. It's like June and July, and like you said, you don't, yeah, I don't have anything. Like I don't have
That's going on.
scoops.
Yeah.
I'm not like
Yeah.
what am I going to analyze like what happened 3 years ago? I might, but I'm like, well, is it worth it? Like it's 120 bucks to get the domain. Like I get ad revenue. I probably get like 150 bucks a year. So it's about break even overall.
Mhm.
So it's not really like I'm doing it for money, but um Mark, when he was working for Comcast Sports, so he was like he was doing the sports thing. He's like, I can't do this. So I took it. Mike Nelson was working for I'm not sure at the time for the newspaper in Minnesota, so he couldn't do it. So it was just me, and I have like 6 kids. So I'm I'm over here like, well, what am I doing? I'm like I'm on a supposed an adult, like just talking to randoms on Twitter and like just putting my thoughts in. But that's the thing. I get so much cool feedback from people
Mhm.
that I'm like I can never give it up. Like even if it's like the 10 people that I normally talk to, like I I'm gonna be doing this anyway. Like I'm a nerd, and I say I'm a nerd. Like I am a nerd. Like if someone asks a question to me, like, "Hey, how many dunks did DJO have in his senior year?" Like I can't leave it. Like I need to
You have to go
know. So
figure
I'm
it
like I'm
out.
gonna go
Yeah.
in there. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, Bark
Well,
Torvik.
and that's what I love about your approach. Like, I mean, we'll talk about
Yeah.
the Twitter community here in a second, but like, you'll get a question and I'll see you respond to it and be like, I'm gonna write an article about that. Like, and I think that's so cool that you just sort of make the work based on what people want, and that's why I think it's so popular. Is like it's quality stuff, of course, but then it's like it's a direct response into what something was asking about. Like I'm thinking like Joe and Phil will have their show and talk about
Yep.
something, and like constantly they're like, well, yeah, I saw Andre, put out there that this happened, and it's just like always this give and take of like, well, we said it, he looked it up, and like then you're the Bible of analysis. It's like, well, whatever he produced is probably correct, and I bet that happens a lot where you just like see a stat, you're like, I need to go figure out more of this.
I mean, the nice thing about my real-time job is that I have enough flexibility to always have
Mhm.
Twitter and
Yeah,
some sort of Ken Palm, Bart Torvik synergy open. Like
yeah.
literally, I could be doing 6 different things. I used to have 3 monitors, and I only have two. But one of them is always on that. So like, my wife is always like, "Do you work?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm working." She's like, "I don't see you working." I'm like, "Well, my work doesn't necessarily entail being
It's
like
okay. I'm getting work
building
done. Yeah,
machinery, so I
yeah.
can have one eye on one and one on the other. But yes, I love talking to people and like kind
Mhm.
of understanding what they think about stuff. Except for losses suck. When the team loses and people are mad at me, I'm like, listen, man,
Yeah,
I
truly.
didn't do it.
Yeah. Well,
Stop
that's what
it.
I was going to ask. Like, I mean, there are definitely within that community of, and if people are wondering, if you put a hashtag and it's MUBB is where you'll find
Oh yeah,
the
that's everywhere.
glory of what we're talking about. But how do you deal with negativity? Because I'm sure people just lash out of like this team stinks, or like do you care about that? Is that personal to you at all?
I used to think about it. Like, I try not to respond because I think when you respond to somebody that's negative, like it just feeds into the negativity, like yourself. And
Sure.
for me,
Yeah.
like, again, this is fun. Like, I'm not here to like lash out. I'm not here to kind of use this as
Hmm.
my venting area. Obviously, I vent during the games mostly, but um, I just think like let them be. Like, this is what
Hmm.
this is them kind of um using it as a way to kind of let this steam out. And as long as it's not like abusive or not hurting me, I'll just leave it up and whatever.
Yeah. I love that.
There's been people that are like super personal. It's weird, so I'll just like mute them and be like, okay, like you want to talk to me,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Fair
Like
enough, man.
I
Yeah.
really don't
Right.
want to
Right.
listen to you. Like
Yeah.
um, but it's been really good because
Hmm.
Twitter is weird and it's getting weirder. So like
Hmm.
it's a lot. I hear a lot of people call it like a hell site and like just something that like why do you do this to yourself? And I think we've built such a good community within like the
Yeah.
MUBB space that like that's what I use it for. Like I don't use it for politics. I don't use it for news. I don't use it like I use it for
Mhm.
Marquette, and what I use it for, it's like amazing. Like this is I have a great time. Like I learn so much. Like you said, I get prompts for stuff I want to write about.
Hmm.
And I just get kind of that community feel where I don't get to go to games. I'm not in like Milwaukee. I
Hmm.
barely ever get to take my family. So um for me, the negativity is like let's say less than like 3% of the normal stuff that I see. So it
Yeah.
really doesn't
Yeah.
bother me. And no one's ever
Yeah.
like followed me and left mean comments on the site. So that's good.
That's good.
Uh,
That's
Yeah,
good. Yeah. And
absolutely.
I will give my, so I want to ask you what your favorite article you've ever written is, but I'll give you my two favorite things you've ever written. The first one was back in 2014 when Marquette was looking for a new head coach, right? And we weren't sure what was going on. And Myron Metcalf of the lauded ESPN wrote an article about saying basically like that Marquette is not a good job. And you were like, I would like to learn more about why he would say that. In the article that you wrote of what he talked about was just so, it was so unbelievably dumb of what Myron wrote, and it was like literally he made stuff up about like,
Yeah,
you know. And did you enjoy that beatdown of
I
Mac?
still do. And like it's bad because like Myron's been very complimentary of Marquette lately, but every time, like even when I retweet him, like, oh, I know what you're really thinking.
You
Because he's
have
from
to, yeah,
Milwaukee. So like he hates
yeah. Apparently
Marquette.
not, but yeah. So yeah,
He just doesn't like Marquette. I don't know where
yeah,
he's from or what his like his
right,
deal is,
right.
but he hates Marquette. And that was like his opportunity to like bash the school. And I was like, I think the title was like, does Marquette has a bad job? Does ESPN
Does he
have
have
editors?
bad editors?
Like all this stuff was just like factually incorrect. I'm like,
I love it.
what are you writing about? Like, how does this go?
Yeah,
Like, I can
they talk about
understand
like,
someone making the case that like this is not as good a job as people make it out to be. Like that, okay.
mhm,
I don't agree, but that's your perspective. Like,
yeah, yeah,
but literally no one in the history of like media had ever said it was a bad job. It's in the middle of nowhere. People are
yeah,
ravenous for it. They spend $20 million a year. You have the full administration's backing,
yeah.
and you're in a great conference. It's like
Hmm.
I this is not DePaul. Like let's at least
Hmm.
put this in perspective. So
Acknowledge that.
now
that
DePaul,
Yeah.
that's a bad job.
Yeah,
that's a
right.
bet.
I guess
Yeah.
not anymore. Yeah, Chris Holtman's doing work, but and then the other one, Andre, is when Buzz Williams left, and it was pulling back the curtain on Buzz Williams.
Yeah.
And how long? So for those listening, this was a long analysis of Buzz leaving and why and some of the thoughts. How long did it take you to write something like that? Like it, what you know, like was that a couple weeks or a couple days or?
No, that was one night. I was just at
Oh
my
my
like
gosh!
I
Yeah,
said, a spurned lover. That's
yeah,
the energy that I put into that because I loved Buzz like you wouldn't believe. So obviously the on-court success, he was kind of a jerk to the newspaper, but that was
right.
his like a shtick. Like he was always kind of acidic and but he gave Mark and I like a 2 hour sit down. He would always feed us scoops and stuff like that. So like he was pretty good to his nobodies from nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I had bought into the Kool-Aid until 2012
Right.
when, and so for anyone that hasn't read it, basically I'm a fanboy drinking with my idols, celebrating Marquette's win. So like basically think of it your best day ever. And that was my feeling. And then I don't know what they were talking about. People that are good at press conferences. I'm like, oh yeah, no
Mhm.
one's better than Buzz. Like he's the best. Imagine like this poor little kid like saying like
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is my idol. I love
Yeah.
him. And so Jeff Goodman goes like he starts laughing at me. He's like, dude, you know it's all a show, right? And I'm like, what? He's like, Buzz. Buzz is a show. Like that's not him. I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, he would have been out of there 2 years ago if it wasn't for like all the
all the
allegations
girls.
around the
Yeah,
team.
yeah.
I'm like, what? He's like, oh boy, because like he knew he saw the naivety. So like I
Uh-huh.
literally I think one of the lines I
You
have
just
is I
told
had
him. You just told him the truth on Santa. You
Yeah, right.
Literally,
That's what it
imagine like
felt like.
telling your like
Yeah.
6 year old like going downstairs and be like, by the
Oh my
way.
gosh. Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, and so I had that with me. So and I had, like I said, at the time I was pretty plugged in, so I knew that stuff was rocky in the back, and I knew he was
Mhm.
going to leave. So I had like pre-planned all this. I didn't written anything, but then I lived in Philly at the time. I was working at a publishing company, and I'm on Twitter on the SEPTA, so the subway, and I get the thing that, hey, Buzz just left, and then I'm on a train for 40 minutes, like spotty internet or whatever. So I didn't start then. I get home, like write like a normal newsy article and try to gather information.
Mhm.
And then I'm like, man, this sucks. Like, so I just started writing, and like I just kept writing, and like the outline just worked itself out, like pulling the curtain, like he was
Yeah,
Oz, and then all this
yeah,
stuff. And I'm just like, you know what? Like, I don't have sources, I don't have anyone to protect. Like, I don't care. I'm just gonna put everything out there. Like, he was a con and he was conning
yeah.
us. And like I was one of the victims of the con. So like I don't have any naivety. So yeah, that's probably one of my top ones as well.
I love it.
It's still the most read ever
Yeah,
that we ever
I
had.
probably have about 40 of those because I was pissed
I,
off even when I kept opening it up and reading
yeah,
it.
no. So that one, and then the other
Yeah.
one that was really good. I mean, it's a sad one, so I don't like to read it all the time. But
Mhm.
when my wife had a miscarriage and we were watching
Mm,
Creighton, and so then I had this whole like, and they were losing to Creighton. It was
yeah.
2019, right when we were melting down. We all we needed was one win to win the Big East, and we went like
Yeah.
0 for 4 on our tries. And it's just like it felt so wrong to care so much about Marquette because like obviously like there was all this personal stuff that was way
Yeah.
more important, and I'm like over here like caring that we're missing three after three or we're throwing the ball away. So it was kind of like a discussion with myself, like should I care so much about basketball? Like what am I doing with my life?
right.
And like I said, one of the reasons it's my favorite is there is, I forget his name and I feel terrible. There was this Jesuit priest that
Mhm.
writes for a national magazine,
Oh,
and he
Father James Martin. I think that's who you're thinking of,
I'm
right?
not,
No.
no, it wasn't him because
Oh,
I
okay.
know him because I think
Okay. Never
Stephen
mind.
Colbert talks about, but
Yeah.
but again, in
Right
that
for basketball sites.
Yeah. Right.
he emailed me out of the blue, and like I feel bad because I never checked the paint touches Gmail. So by the way, if you emailed the paint touches that kind, like just DM me because I probably haven't checked it in 3 months.
Yeah.
It had been a month later, and he was just like not consoling me, but like talking through how like, hey, I'm a Jesuit priest and I kind of live this all the time. Like I live and breathe by Marquette basketball, but like I care for these people. Like how do I? And so like it really put into perspective that we're living this life and we care about a lot of stuff. And some of the stuff that we care about doesn't necessarily impact our life in the way that like running to the street and getting hit by a car would, but it
Mhm.
impacts the way that we feel every single day. And that is our life because how we feel is our life. Like
Mhm.
and so it was this great message. So I again, I can't read the article as much as I want to because it makes me
Sure.
sad. It was a
Yep.
sad
Yep.
time, but I
Mhm.
just felt like that was such a like a pretty accurate portrayal of like why am I still writing this blog when I am no longer on school? Like I haven't been to a game in five
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Like people read it, but am I doing it because I'm vain? And I like that people say, "Hey, I like your stuff." So I think those two are probably the top
That's
top ones
awesome.
I'd written.
So something I want to acknowledge that you said, with writing like the one about Buzz, is you didn't care what people were going to think. You were just
Yeah,
like, what? And I think that's so critical. And when we talk about entrepreneurship and like putting your things out there, sometimes you just have to not give a shit what anyone thinks. Like
Yeah.
honestly, and
Oh,
and that
totally.
that's half the battle because all too often when we try to come up with content, whether it's writing for a music
Oh,
site,
that's
whether
me
it's a
right now.
speaker,
That's
right?
my whole
Like
next
or
year.
writing
Yeah.
here, like I have to just not care what people and like go for it. And if I care about it and they do like Andre, that's so great that you thought that. You wrote an incredible article. That's what I read it like a lot. And like that's it came from this sense, of course, you had emotions right attached to it, but you didn't care. You're just like,
yeah,
here's how I feel. And if someone feels that same way, like here we go. That is such a good lesson to take away. Whatever you're passionate about, it doesn't matter what other people think. You're passionate about it. So
Yeah.
go do it. Like go do that thing. And I just think that's such like a critical thing that led to a lot of people wanting to read your content. And clearly it was came from the heart, which I think is awesome. You know.
Yeah. So question for you
Mhm.
yeah.
because this is something that I run into with music. I go to shows a ton. I go to concerts a bunch,
Yeah.
and I actually was just at one, not this past week, the week before, where I was going with some friends and we were going to watch it, and like it's through a radio station, and the radio station, one of them, I reviewed their show on Monday,
Hmm.
and but their Thursday show, I was just going to hang out, And so one of the people from the radio station walks up and they're like, "Hey, are you gonna write a review on this one?" And I was like, no, I'm actually just kind of here to hang out. Like,
Enjoying
this
it.
is the first time in like years that I
Yeah.
really am going to a concert and felt like
Yeah.
pressured to, or not pressure to write it up, but like I just was like, no, I'm just here to hang out and
Hmm.
enjoy the show kind of thing. I'm not doing any kind of coverage, no recap, no video, no nothing from it, like no social, nothing. Do you feel when a Marquette game happens? Like, have you ever felt pressure to be like, I really got to write up this game against Coastal Carolina that doesn't mean anything, but I gotta write it because somebody's out there looking for paint touches.
Dude, like I said, we lived the same track. So I used and less so a gamer, but I used to do these Twitter recaps. And again, people love them because
Hmm.
everyone likes to see the reactions after the fact. And I still go
Totally.
in sometimes. And I would like it would suck because I had to have a computer and like I'm watching, but I'm watching the screen and I'm like cutting and pasting all this stuff. And I have to rush to get it up. And it like it felt like I was like half watching the game. And it was like 2015, and I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like I I
Mhm.
I want to watch the games. Like I'll still analyze, like still talk about it, but I don't
Hmm.
want to have to write. So that was like I do it once in a while for like really crazy events, but I'm like not during the game. So I have completely quit like the analyzing in real time or like the writing about the experience. So now anytime I go to a game, I make sure it's for like the environment. So like I talk about my kids a lot because it's a lot of what I do, but my son, he's 9. He's obsessed with sports. So I'm trying to get him into this Marquette lifestyle. And so we went to the NCAA tournament when it was in Columbus 2 years ago. We went to Indianapolis last year, and then we just went to Dayton. So anytime when it's nearby, we try to go. And like being there is a completely different experience than watching on TV. And then when you're there, it's I gotta put away my like journalist hat because I'm always thinking about like all these numbers and all these
Yeah.
stats. I'm like I still have it in me, but I'm not going to like put it down on paper and I'm not going to put this pressure on myself because I hate it. Like I'm just not good at condensing my thoughts in like a short amount of time. I am more of a,
Hmm.
and that's why I'm good for a blog and not good for a newspaper. I'm good in like just word vomiting for like 1,500 words and then maybe trimming
Yeah.
to like 14.99. Uh but yeah, I'm so glad you said that because I don't feel that pressure anymore. I think that gene has been lost in me. But I'll give you this. Right after, I'm working for a health company, but my friend Mark again, he hooked me up with the AP. So I would do gamers for Badgers football, and for the AP, um, and it would be like 100-word blurb, but I had to be there and I have to go to the press conferences, and it just like was the worst. Like you have to run to the. I'm just like, I
And
am
it's the
not made out for
Badgers.
this. Yeah,
Oh,
well,
yeah.
outside of that,
Yeah, right.
but yeah, that pressure kind of took the fun away of what I was doing.
Mhm.
So now, this side hustle that I have is purely kind of like post fact, nothing in the moment, unless it's extreme or something else
Yeah,
happens.
Yeah.
that's great. And
And like that's when you realize like you're your own boss.
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
like, like you could, yes, if so I work for On Milwaukee too. So I work for a job that really does rely on clicks and numbers, getting all of the, getting the attention. But when I'm doing it for myself, I have to sometimes also take my head out of like, yeah, of course, this is gonna get 100 views if I write it,
Hmm.
or 200 views right away if I write it. But sometimes I'm like, if I'm just not feeling it, I have to tell myself, you're your own boss today.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're doing this for your site. Like if you can't do it today, that's okay.
Hmm.
Like you have to like step back. But again, there was a time where I would be like, this came out 10 minutes ago and the journal's gonna get on it or somebody
It-
else is gonna get on it before
Yep.
me.
Hmm.
Like I gotta crap out an article on this thing, do it just to say I did
Exactly.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I think one thing that you do really well is you capture the spirit of like how a lot of people are feeling like after a game, whether good or bad. And I can imagine how much that's shifted in the last 3 or 4 years and under
Uh,
a new, regime and just like how that's been like it's just got to be more fun,
it
to be
is.
it's just how we feel.
It is, and so thinking about like the Marcus Howard era, and again, for anyone who
Hmm.
doesn't know, one of the most prolific scorers all time, just like a
Hmm.
bucket and a half. Like he could shoot from anywhere. Um, Probably one of my favorite players ever, because there was
Hmm.
no shortage of stats I could ever pull out
All the
that would
time.
cease to
Yeah.
amaze. Like
It was
everything
like a
was just
video
like,
game.
wait, how is
Yeah.
he doing this? Like, let me put in perspective. Yeah, look how bonkers this is. It was great, but like thinking back on that, I think I clung so hard to him because the results on the court were so like mediocre.
Exactly.
And
Needed him. That was it.
yeah,
Oh,
and you
yeah.
we
Yeah.
like that was what kind of made me feel special. Like that, hey, we have him. Yeah, sure, we're like ranked 40th, but we
Yeah.
have him and
Yeah.
you don't. And so now, obviously, not to say that I don't love Kolek or Oso or Cam
Hmm.
or Stevie or any of the players in a kind of very kind of strong way, but the
Hmm.
team aspect, the results aspect is just a night and day difference
So
because when you're
different.
writing about a team that plays the right way, gives it their
Hmm.
all, and gets the results, like my Twitter mentions are much nicer. My analysis doesn't have to be quite as
A bit more
harsh, stuff
fun.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I feel that.
all
What
that
is
stuff. Yeah.
out of all this, as we start getting to the end here, what's the most gratifying part of what you do? What do you enjoy the most? Is it interacting with people on the app? Is it writing? Is it watching? What's your favorite part about running this site?
Two things. One is getting to test out my chops. So, I am a marketing analyst by day, which means I do
Hmm.
numbers for my company for our marketing stuff that we run. And so, like, I'm a journalism major. Like, I took one stat class, and it was a like a night class, and I fell asleep through half of them. Like, I am not a math person. Like, outside
Right.
of the fact that I'm a nerd, I am
Yeah.
not a
I
math person. Like,
Same life. My
I use
Same.
Instagram
Excel to
bio
do like
says bad at math.
Yes. There you
yeah,
go.
like it
I
did. Like
I failed one of the stats classes and then
Uh-huh.
had to retake.
I had a 95 going into the final, and it was so bad. I got like a B. What was it, BC at the time, or I don't
Yeah.
know. That was
Yeah,
like the only
yeah.
non-B I ever got. That or so like that. Yeah, I never claimed to be anyone I'm not, and like I'm not a numbers person. I just love numbers, and so like paint touches helped me so much to tell a story out of those numbers.
Mm.
And I use this every interview I've ever done is that Synergy, which is a platform for basketball stats, is where I got my start into analytics in the sense that I had never done anything before outside of like, hey, look at those page views. They went up or, hey, they went
Hmm.
down.
Hmm.
But Synergy, this advanced stats platform that we got access to through a friend of a friend, just changed my life because I started seeing things in a different way. And so now you get
Hmm.
these numbers and you tell the story about the numbers. So that's still the thing that I love the most is to put into context what I can see visually reading a spreadsheet, but others
Yeah.
might need a chart and an explanation and a story for. So
I
again,
love that.
it's
Yeah.
very nerdy. Like my uncle always texts me like, "I love your article. Didn't understand a lot of it, but it was great." So like
Nice.
I always try to write with that in mind. Like if
Yeah.
I can understand O rating, I understand RAPM, I understand DPIM, but
Hmm.
for the people that might not, like how do I convey this thing that excites me in a way
Hmm.
that they can understand and like not have to feel they have to be reading a thesaurus um, to go. So that, I think that's the thing that I still love is being
Love
able
it.
to do
I love
that
it.
on a day-to-day
Well,
basis.
I would say that our definition of like a Marquette Woj bomb would be when I see new to PT in all caps and there's a new article that's coming and we got to read it. So
uh,
that's it. But um, so Andre, from your perspective, like in the next, year or two or five, what do you see for paint touches? Like, do you continue as you are? Are there new things that you all want to explore? What do you think is coming?
I think I've been hesitant because I had a lot of kids that were younger, but now we're no longer having more kids, so my kids will no longer be in their like baby stage. I've been reached out by a couple of students on campus, and that's one thing I've done poorly is like give back. So obviously I said how awesome it was when I was a student and I had this opportunity and we took it and we ran with it, and it's something that I still do to this day. And
Hmm.
like I just never reached out to like whole base of students that you have every single year that are probably like
Sure.
wanting to get an opportunity. So I think that's my next step is probably getting some sort of like on-campus coverage. I'm not a gamer guy. Like I don't like game recaps. And I
Hmm.
don't want to just do some like something dumb, but using like leveraging that, giving people an opportunity. So I think that's my next step.
I love
I have to respond to a couple of people, is trying to give back a little bit. And not that I
it.
know what I'm doing. I still kind of just like, hey, I don't have a lot of work today. I might write. But getting that opportunity to give them this platform, like, 'cause, hey, people like to read it, and like
Mhm.
that's a privilege that I've still got. And so like let me kind of give some of that back. So I think that's the next step, but I'll still be tweeting. Like I'm not going, I'll maybe blue skying if everyone follows, but blue sky
Yeah.
tweeting and posting, like that's me. Like I'll never give that up. It could be just me and you, Jim. We're the last ones left, but
We're good, man.
yeah,
I'll
like
be there. I'll be reacting
Well,
and responding.
I would say I'm gonna go follow you on Blue Sky right now.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
okay,
give
yeah. I
Excellent.
there
always
we go.
forget because like I always have Twitter up, but I don't have both. I gotta have both of them up. But yes, that's me. I'm just gonna be nerding out, kind of venting, yelling at refs, and
That's
probably
what we do.
till I can't. Yeah.
Yeah, rinse and repeat until we die. That's pretty much
Yes.
it. That's
I
how
love
it
it.
goes. That's my second death reference.
Oh.
We're having issues today.
Yeah,
Well,
we got to talk about that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Andre, thank you, man, so much for being here and for sharing your gifts and talents with our little community that we have. That's here in Milwaukee, and we're excited, man, for hopefully a great rest of the season and a hell of a run in March, and we'll be there watching your reaction to all of it.
oh,
So
Yeah.
so
yeah, no, I
thank you.
I was
appreciate you
gonna
having
pull
me
it
on.
out somewhere.
Mhm.
I have a $20 future, and I went to
He
Vegas
does.
right before the beginning of the
I
season.
texted Alan to do a feature.
20 bucks on Marquette to win the national championship.
So yeah,
Hey,
Great.
hey.
Pay out like 1,200.
Shaka's back, baby. Let's go. Yeah, I can't believe it's only 1,200. I thought it'd be low. Well, maybe they're better. I mean, who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, well,
Time will tell.
they
Yeah.
were plus 600 going
Uh-huh.
into the season. It was
Yeah.
like the day before the season started.
I
So
love it.
we got a glimpse
Yeah.
of them or something. But
Yeah.
I will be pulling for it, and I will be watching it. Not only with my betting interest into it now, but with Paint Touch's interest into it as
That's
well.
right.
Well, now I'm doubly interested for you.
There we go.
Perfect.
We can tell the story of me going to Vegas to cash it out at some
Yes, yes.
point. Hopefully.
two.
Fingers
Part two.
crossed, knock on wood. Thank you so much for doing this.
Mhm.
If you are watching or listening for the first time or the 95th time, we are the Hustling Sideways podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. We are also on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we are on Instagram, we are on LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube, and we may be on Blue Sky by the
Who
time
knows?
that,
Time will
that
tell.
comes
Yeah.
out. I don't know. We have an email address too. If you want to be a guest on the show, feel free to email us. It is hustlingsideways@gmail.com. And Jim,
Keep on hustling.
we will see you next week. Thank you so much.
Peace.